Hi everyone, my name is Sergey Nadtochiy. I'm the curator of the Metaverse Architecture Biennale and founder of Dearch space. And today we have great guests, SoomeenHahm from SoomeenHamm Design and Stepan Kukharskiy from SA Lab. These great architects would discuss the topic of virtual architecture, experiments and practice, and they definitely have a lot to say about this things because we've seen many projects that were built by this architects, but a lot more projects that were virtual, that were experimental, that were very resonating with the architectural discourse. And it would be great to see the connection between doing, so to say, conventional architectural projects and speculating about virtual architecture and virtual design in general and where it's going to go. So, um, yeah, uh, I would like to give the first word to Soomeen to present her projects, and then would go Stepan, and then we're going to discuss this.
Cool. Hi, shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. My name is SoomeenHahm. I am here to represent SoomeenHamm Design and Studio Eagle Vantage, as we have submitted our pavilion together in this Metaverse Biennale, as we have collaborated few projects together in our history, and then we decided to join this event together to celebrate our work together. So this is our pavilion, and this is a short description of our practice. And these are the key personnel who contributed quite a lot for this project. And this is our team under SoomeenHamm Design Ltd. We have been also working quite a lot of projects that are related to mixed reality. So we are going to introduce a little bit of how we see about these technologies. As we have been uh, approaching from the digital age, we are living in the age of augmented age, with the smartphones and the devices are much more closer to our bodies. We are already extending our physical limitations by using the devices that are very close to our bodies. And furthermore, I have been very interested in uh, um, more devices and machines and wearables that are actually can be helpful for extending human body, human limitations, and how they can also contribute to our design and fabrication industry. So that was part of the interest that I have been having always. And the age that we're living in, the most of the challenge that we are facing is to establish a harmonious relationship between human and machine. And I think that is our responsibility who live in this world. And this book called Human and Machine is one of my favorite books that really describes the urgency of how to establish a harmonious relationship between human and machine in the age of AI. And in a way that I approach mixed reality or augmented reality is really coming from the interest uh, of developing our fabrication industry and really looking at our labors differently. Maybe previously we always have been looking at robots as labor, but how about uh, looking at it a little bit differently? Um, we for the last decades, we have developed quite a lot in digital fabrication methodologies and research, but most of the research has been dominantly on automation, robotics, CNC, 3D printing, or modular robots, which has been really, really great and have been very successfully developed. Lots of projects are very actively going on. But in most of the cases, when we talk about automation, um, there are lots of kind of simplification and ignorance of complexities, or uh, very much of simplification of material behavior or the material property, and it needs to come down to a very simple additive process or subjective process or component-based aggregation. And most of these, the previous cases could not really accommodate this kind of need of complex or delicate kind of material properties and making processes. But we have to face that these fabrication methodologies are still necessary, and there are certain materials that they yield these complexities by its nature. And sometimes it's very difficult to just come to a very simple aggregation logics. And then, so since then, as an example of this project from Bartlett, um, that we have been developing with students. On the left is a project by Benjamin in ETH a long time ago, 2007, something like that. Of course, our project is not so new. It's been done in 2016, something like that. But in this example, what we want to discuss is that although they kind of propose some kind of similar kind of aesthetics, but on the left is 3D printed with very highly inaccessible, kind of very expensive machine in order to produce that, while in our occasion, it could have been developed with a very hands-on. It's also a one-to-one model that is basically fabricated with a very simple hack of material behavior. So we used balloon as a mold to create this kind of woven geometry. So we in Bartlett in RC Research Cluster 6, we have been developing quite a lot of projects with portfolios, really looking at this kind of complex geometries that are generated by digital generative processes, while we produce them one-to-one with synthetic material behavior, understanding of meaningful material use. So we don't have to be always constrained in using any, having to use any machine. Of course, using machine will be more helpful, but we didn't really constrain ourselves to have to be machined or 3D printed. And then most of the products were very successful in terms of being able to produce um, meaningful, more efficient, more sustainable, uh, large scale one-to-one model with complex geometries. However, the bridge between the precision in order to translate this were a kind of very vague, and we were very difficult. We were struggling to find a means to bridge these two. And the consumerization of AR devices have been the leap for us as one of the solution to really being able to utilize computational complexity and human delicacy in making. So that's why we started to introduce augmented reality in the first time in 2016 when the Microsoft HoloLens was released for consumers. And we have been developing this agenda since 2016 from Bartlett and Igor, our partnering company. He has been taking over this unit in Bartlett, and while I am currently teaching full-time in SciArc, and shifted my interest a little bit further from the focus in AR to focus in AR, extended AR, also integrating with robotics. So AR fabrication, as you can see that we have a number of years and number of projects, academic projects, to explore different material processes, mainly at the Bartlett and Summit DAA. And you can see some of our previous examples, and that continued to SciArc to experiment different projects. And this was in 2019, a pavilion that we collaborated with Hologram, Cameron Newhan, Gwilin Zhang, myself, and Igor Pantich. And we have built and completed this pavilion completely fully using augmented reality fabrication method, from the building, from the fabrication of parts to assembly, completely using AR methods. And this is how we were bending one of the stream. And we had around 145, 47 numbers of stripes. Each of them were different curvature. And traditional steam bending needed a very heavy, very heavy mold. But because of the use of AR, we were able to set up all this mold in a flexible manner. So we could have really hacked this traditional steam bending method in order to make this very complex geometries. So that is our resulting pavilion, with a lot of people's help, obviously. And we also had another version of it as SciArc, presented by Igor and myself together. And we also had another small pavilion as a landscape project. This happened in 2020, and the interesting kind of contribution of this project is that at that time, the suddenly pandemic happened, and none of our design team were able to visit the site, and only our let's say student volunteers were working for our project, but we have been like remotely communicating, and it was quite successfully communicated, even the consideration of these complex geometries. So these are the views that the student volunteers were seeing and building, and we were able to also supervise them based on the uploaded cloud-based digital twin of the site. So this is a digital twin. In a daily manner, they were uploading this kind of three-dimensional image, so we could compare and give them any supervision. So yeah, and furthermore, our further interest is to also integrating more different machines. If we could also work with wearable machines, that's something that we are really interested in. Currently, we are trying to communicate or utilize robot arm and create. This is a reference done by the Index Lab, which I think is a very good example of the use of computer precision and human delicacy. So the robot is very good at positioning these geometries or these panels in a precise position, and a human can easily go behind and nail it or weld it. Can work with a little bit more complex job. So in that manner, we are also currently looking at communicating with robot in a way that robot can help. So we were like hacking the AR bending process and communicating with robots. So robot was holding and human were bending. But this is just a beginning, as we don't have multi robots. If we had multi robots, maybe it could have been like full robotic processes. These are in a class context. We have been developing this type of furniture scale products with students. This was a chair that made by SciArc students, and this was a staircase making process. And this was a staircase, 3 steps as a sample steps, and this was the exhibition that we had. And we are also interested in looking at different. Currently, we are looking at clay as a material. We are interested in like exploring different materials, and this is a recent shingle projects that we have produced with Yonsei University students, and a recent project with robots and dancers with performance, kind of real-time interaction performance. Yeah, so they were our kind of work that we are doing in our school, in our practice, which we are going to also present some of these contents more in detail in our world, as we are going to post a lot of videos, and our pavilion and our Metaverse Biennale world is kind of a small sample exhibition of all of these concepts. So I hope you guys enjoy visiting. And yeah, if that is it from me.
Thank you. Lots of very beautiful and technologically very complex projects, and lots of questions that I would like to ask. But let's first listen to the presentation of Stepan.
Hi. Should I start?
1 second. Yeah, we just share the screen, please. Yes. Now. Yeah, okay. We are ready to go.
So my name is Stepan. I'm an architect and co-founder at SA Lab, and we create architecture and landscapes both for physical and digital worlds. That's me. we started working on a project in physical worlds, experimenting a lot with digital fabrication techniques, creative coding, and things like that. These are just some examples of the projects for physical worlds. But I'd like to mostly concentrate on projects for digital worlds. And the first experience we had with the digital project completely was when we were supposed to create pavilions for Science Festival. And then the pandemic happened, COVID happened, and we had to move our pavilions in the digital space completely. So we were working on 2 versions of the pavilions, and this was the first time when we truly experienced the freedom of the digital space and the possibilities it contains for architects. When we were working in physical world, we had a lot of constraints like budget, the laws of physics and so on. But here in digital world, we were completely free, experimenting with the gravity, experimenting with the movement of the player in the space, and so on. So both of the pavilions that we were creating were inspired by a game called Game of Life, invented by John Conway in the late 70s. And the architecture and the shape and geometry of pavilions is created by a complex algorithm mimicking the biological systems. So it kind of evolves and appears in a space at a 3D shape. And this was our first experience when we were mostly working with game engines like Unity. And this is what the project completely created with Unity game engine. Later on, we started experimenting with web technologies. And there is an idea that the metaverse is already here, and it's the internet. And all we have to do is just to make the internet 3D. So that's why we started to experiment with web technologies. And another project I'd like to show today is a desktop application for a museum of modern art. And they have a digital program in this museum collecting different kind of researches, articles, video games, art projects created in a digital space. And what we were working on is a kind of endless space that you can explore. And while exploring this space, you can find different kind of artifacts that tell you about different projects. And this project was completely made with web technologies without any game engines. We switched to special libraries like 3GS, working with 3D in a browser, and some meta frameworks like SvelteKit. And this project was completely like written in the text code without using any node languages and traditional programs for architects working with digital fabrication like Grasshopper and Rhino, for example. Let me show you a small video. Oh yeah, sorry. So this is an endless space, and you travel through the space looking for some kind of artifacts and some like gem-like structures, and they connect you with the information with some researches or video games or something like that. Different kind of sections, like you can scan this space, and no matter where you go, the space is always around you. It repeats itself, and it never ends. This was like the idea of a constant search, of a constant exploration, that we tried to recreate in this project. We also do a lot of workshops and tutorials. Those screenshots are from Digital Futures program, where we try to experiment with students from across the globe with web technologies. We were creating web apps, for example, where you could assemble something out of something, like a web constructor where you have a predefined kit of parts, and then you can assemble them together in a way that you want, and create something in the browser. And another topic we were experimenting with is creating virtual spaces. I know somewhere in the video is supposed to be here. Okay. Completely virtual spaces in the browser with open source technologies and libraries like 3JS. And we think that this can be maybe a great way for architects to experiment with technologies, and maybe a great way to explore. And maybe some new possibilities for them can be hidden in this way. So basically our projects combine computational design, web design, and game design. So this is the virtual spaces we were creating with web technologies. We were modeling something with models with Blender, and then assembling them all together with 3JS and JavaScript, creating the logic of the space, the physics of the space, and so on. And all our educational activities ended up with making a platform of our own that we are working on actively right now. The platform is focused on creative coding education and mostly procedural design techniques, complex simulations like cellular automata or agent movements, something like that. These are just the screenshots of the interface, where you have all the learning materials on the right, and working files and code on the left, and your project in the center. And we experiment with different options and locations here, experimenting also with different educational techniques. Maybe sometimes it's completely games, sometimes it's just step-by-step tutorials, experimenting with different kind of simulations, like this one is the image from sustainable city game, where you have to plant trees to decrease the overall temperature in the city, and the temperature is calculated with simulation techniques. Or sometimes we just make some crazy art like this one. Just, I don't know, because it's fun. So yeah, if you'd like to learn more, please follow those QR codes. And thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of great projects, and they're all very deeply connected to different web technologies. So, of course, well, you can limit the meaning of the metaverse to a few platforms that have used this term a lot, but we don't want to do this. I guess we all understand the metaverse as a complex shift from Web 2 to the immersive internet and different forms that it can have. So we've seen some immersive internet from Stepan, and we've seen a few projects almost fully created with augmented realities technologies from Soomeen. And my first question is actually to Soomeen, because not so many architects actually have had so much access to HoloLens, which is probably sort of the best, the most immersive augmented reality headset we have nowadays. And I think that yeah, architects do like to speculate a lot about this kind of augmented layer, but usually most of them have seen it just through their phones or iPads, probably. Since you and your colleagues have spent so much time and actually building architecture or just like observing it in the headsets, how do you think this technology can change our perception of architecture later on, where much more people would have access to this kind of goggles that would put us in this augmented world?
Thank you for the question. It's something that I'm also find find it very difficult to guess, because we also need to see the trend in the market, how the things are developed. There has been some time recently they laid off a big portion of AR departments in big companies. So it also depends on the interest of the market and the industry who are interested in developing more and lighter devices. But I think for a number of years, people has been feeling some fatigue of these heavy devices. So it's, VR lenses are good for game for just few hours. Yeah, but it's not really something that you can expect that you are going to wear it all the time, like some sci-fi movies. It is very heavy and tiring. Maybe the people are saying in the far future there will be like contact lenses with AR information. Of course, that's a dream, and if of course if we see that the industry and the companies are really pushing for that industry for developing those kind of technology, I would say maybe there are some bright future of that. But right now, the trend of markets seems like the interest of developing those technologies are a little bit slowing down. But there has been some skepticism in the wearing of heavy devices. So I feel like I think it was we should like look at this very differently nowadays. There are possibilities that we can use this for fabrication or like overlaying some BIM information, and really helpful for us to match digital models. Or maybe there are better like projection methodologies, or there will be some other technologies will evolve that we can experience this mixed realities much better. Like, we have these 3D screens that looks like it's 3D models are coming out of a building. I think those technologies have much more potential and in terms of popularities. But I am a little bit skeptical of having a full-time experiencing overlay of AR hologram and experiencing our world with heavy lenses. Like, I think like using phone and doing a few hours, I think that's totally totally possible, and I see that. But with HoloLens or like with lenses, that really depending on the market and the the interest of the industry.
Okay, Stepan, do you agree with this statement? Because, well, you were experimenting more with kind of advanced Web 2 experiences, right? Building this 3D worlds. And maybe, well, you have chosen it exactly because you also don't think that we're yet ready to get fully immersed with augmented reality. And but there is, but still, you're kind of exploring the potential of the flat screen internet. Um, did you do this looking in the perspective that we're going to this augmented or mixed reality, or you really thought that this flat internet browsing, yeah, can give something to architecture?
Well, I do agree that there is a place for skepticism concerning those AR headsets. They're weight, they're heavy, and they're hard to be in all day. But at the same time, last year we had which was like really unexpected for me. So I don't know. I think maybe it's too early to be sure in whether it's going to be a great technology or whether it's not going to be a great technology, and we are still like in the very early stage of the development of AR and XR and things like that. As for web technologies and why we are experimenting with them, it's just because they are really accessible for everyone. They're open source technologies, and well, I guess every device we use now, either phone or tablet or computer, they all have browsers, and browsers support a lot of different technologies like the same AR, VR, and XR. And of course, they allow for 3D worlds. And that's why I guess web is a great platform to experiment with these things and with these technologies. And as architects are great in organizing space and landscapes and organizing information in space, I think it's natural for them to try and experiment with these technologies because, to my mind, like web technologies are greatly connected with architecture in many different ways. And I think architects are great at creating technologies and at inventing stuff and at experimenting with new technologies. So yeah, I don't know whether this was the answer to your question, but these are my thoughts.
Thank you. But so I would ask you then, what is this the point of this experimentation? So if we're all skeptical about diving in the metaverse with like constant access to goggles, so to say, meaning that probably we're still gonna stick with the version of internet we have today for some time, then what is the reason of trying these new tools for the design, like working with these goggles? like what motivates you? What's your actual interest in this?
In our project, we were always acting with one question: what if? What happens if we try this thing? What happens if we try that thing? And
what happened?
What happened? The project that you saw in the presentation, they happened. That's the result of the explorations. I guess that the more techniques and technologies you experiment with, the more freedom you have as creator, and the more answers you can have to the problems and the challenges we all are facing now. I wouldn't say that we're totally skeptical about jumping into metaverse. I would say that we are still in a very early stage of answering question, why do we need metaverse exactly? Is it just a 3D space, just another 3D space we can run in, or is it something more? And basically, this is the question we were asking ourselves when we were starting working on the pavilion we prepared for the Metaverse exhibition. And the main idea is of the pavilion is to try to understand what we can take from the past into the future, and what are essential parts of the past we can take in the future and present them in this 3D way, immersive way that Metaverse has. And I guess that this immersiveness, this can help us create more immersive, more deeper experiences, more the experiences that tell stories more vividly, more brightly than other technologies that we have now. And I guess that telling stories is one of the core ideas and things that everyone on Earth shares together. Because, well, stories form communities, stories form, I don't know, some movements in history. And I guess that if we have a new tell to tell greater stories in a different way, it's a tool that worth exploration and experimenting with.
Maybe I want to also add to that question. Maybe my answer is, for example, I don't see, for example, I don't see metaverse or what we are doing today is very different from what we already have in, for example, different online games. We have Minecraft, for example. They are like their own metaverse. And I feel like it's a little bit weird to thinking about metaverse and fantasizing it as if it's a Matrix world. You know, we are not having another Matrix. We are just having another platform to communicate. It's similar to now we are socializing with social media, Instagram, and we can make friends with Instagram. When we didn't have this, we were living in a different world, and there were different types of social, but we still keep the way we social as in offline, you know. So it's just we are having more and more context, more and more platform, but nothing is really replacing what we already had, but it's some additional alternatives. And the reason I think it's important for us to grasp this skill and try to proactively utilize it is because I think by the gamification of software, it really allows us to interact with digital world more intuitively. And I think that is a very important aspect of any of these AR, VR, metaverse technologies, because we can communicate with something, maybe with conversation, with gesture. We don't have to use mouse and keyboard anymore, which already became a lot more free from drawing something just by CAD and putting points to, you can now just make a stroke with your with your stick, control stick, in VR spaces, and you can draw something with your gesture. I think that kind of shift is already suggesting something, but the technicians or engineers will never give us any creative solutions for architects or designers. No, we have to understand those technology and where they can go, and then we should be able to suggest how to utilize those technologies and being able to help our design practices to be more creative. And then maybe whenever we have some very creative, sketchy solutions or proposals, maybe the industry will follow up and the engineers will make better softwares for architects, but they won't. It's never going to be vice versa. They will never design something for architects and it's very creative. It's going to be something that we have to understand what technology is out there, and being able to find a creative and much more meaningful and efficient way to improve our practice. I think that's why we need to understand this and we need to learn it.
Thank you. Thank you. I totally agree with you. And yeah, I believe that architects should be more proactive and don't follow the market, but try to formulate this with some provocations, some experiments. And both of your studios do great work in this movement. So I wish you good luck with this. And thank you very much for this discussion. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me here.
Bye-bye.